Quick art tips number 5. I realize it's kind of impossible to talk about everything there is to know about composition in one short video, but I'll just mention some of the things I do and think about while composing an image. Some people prefer to draw the background first, but I like to tell a story with the background, so I always at least start the foreground before doing the background, just to make sure not to obstruct anything important in the background. You want to avoid having the foreground blend in too much with the background. People tend to look at the place with the most contrast, so if you've drawn a face, make sure to frame it to make sure that's where the contrast is. Another trick for leading people's eyes where you want is to use lines. The edge between the snow and the forest, as well as the tree, will lead people's eyes towards the character. Another important thing is balance. Symmetry is balanced but also kind of boring, so create some motion with imbalance. If you want, you can have a lot of imbalance between left and right to create motion in one direction, but in this case I just want to use what I like to call balanced imbalance. I want the balance to shift back and forth, left to right, in kind of like a zigzag pattern. If you want to have more than one thing in the image with a lot of contrast and detail, and they're not next to each other on the same plane, you need to decide which one should be the main focal point. The foreground doesn't have to be the focal point. In this case, however, I want the derpy looking guy in the foreground to be the focal point. That means he has to be more detailed and have more contrast than the owl in the back. But pay attention to how the edge between the snow and the forest now creates a line between the derpy guy and the owl, the main focal point and the secondary focal point. The composition now creates kind of a triangle, but if you analyze the balance, it's still kind of a zigzag pattern that leads from the foreground backwards into the forest. The guy just looked too derpy, so I liquefied him. Lastly, I boosted the guy, aka the main focal point, with some brighter colors and some more contrast. Whatever you do, don't take a screenshot and zoom into his face.